I want the window seat.
I'm sorry?
You heard me. I want to sit by the window. You're just going to fall asleep anyway, so it doesn't even matter to you.
This is my assigned seat, sweetheart. 4A. I checked in this morning and chose it specifically.
Well, I want it. Mom, tell him.
Excuse me, sir. My daughter would really appreciate sitting by the window. She gets anxious on flights. Surely you can understand that.
I hope she has a comfortable flight. My seat is 4A.
Are you seriously going to argue with a child right now? Over a window seat?
I'm not arguing with anyone. I'm simply sitting in the seat I paid for.
This is so unfair. He doesn't even care that I'm upset. Mom, he's being so rude.
I know, baby. Some people are just like that.
Excuse me? I couldn't help overhearing. I'm in 5A. I'd be happy to switch with you so your daughter can have a window seat a row back.
No. I want that one. This row is better.
It's the same view. Same side of the plane, same altitude, same...
I said I want this one. Why does nobody listen?
She's made her preference clear. I'd think adults would be more accommodating. It's really not a big deal.
Then it shouldn't be hard to let it go.
What did you just say to me?
I said it's time to find your seat. We're about to push back.
Mom, did you hear that? He just talked to me like I'm nobody.
You're going to regret being this rude to us. I guarantee it.
I genuinely hope you enjoy the flight.
That exchange happened in the first 4 minutes of boarding, before the seatbelt sign came on, before the safety demonstration, before the plane had even left the gate at Los Angeles International Airport on a Tuesday afternoon that, by all appearances, looked completely unremarkable. The man in seat 4A was Walter Greer, 62 years old. He was traveling with a worn leather briefcase, a battered laptop, and no checked bags. He wore a plain gray sport coat and no tie, and if you passed him on the street, you would not look twice. Kendall Ashford was 12. She was traveling with her mother, Diane, a carry-on bag that had already caused a scene at the overhead bin, and the absolute certainty that the world owed her whatever she asked for. They were flying to New York, a birthday trip. Diane had mentioned loudly to the gate agent, the flight attendant, and at least 2 strangers in the boarding line.
Mom, his elbow is on my armrest. The whole armrest. He's taking up all of it.
Sir, could you please be more mindful of the shared space?
Of course.
He moved his arm without a word. No irritation, no sigh, no eye roll. Just a quiet adjustment, like a man who had been through far more difficult conversations than this one. Priya Mehta, seated directly behind them, noticed that. She noticed it because she had been watching the whole thing since the boarding door, and something about the way Walter carried himself didn't fit. He was too still, too unbothered. Most people would have moved to a different row by now, or called the flight attendant, or at minimum muttered something under their breath. Walter just opened his laptop and began to read.
Why is it so loud back here? Can you turn that down?
My laptop's on silent.
Well, something is making noise, because I can hear it, and it's annoying me.
I'm not sure what to tell you.
You could tell me you're sorry. For starters.
Walter looked at her for one long moment. Then he looked back at his screen. That was all. But Dominic Walsh, a high school football coach seated across the aisle in 4B, had watched enough of this to feel the tension building in his own chest. He leaned slightly toward Priya's row and said, just quietly enough,
If my kid acted like that in public, I'd turn this whole trip around.
She hasn't even started yet.
And Priya was right. Because what happened over the next 40 minutes turned a mildly uncomfortable flight into something that people would be talking about for a very long time. Kendall had decided, with the focused intensity that only a truly spoiled child can summon, that Walter Greer's existence in the seat next to her was a personal offense. She put her feet up on his footrest. She leaned over to look at his screen without asking. She knocked his tray table with her elbow, twice, and the second time she didn't acknowledge it at all.
Honey, do you want your headphones? I packed the good ones.
He keeps moving around, and it's bothering me. Can you ask him to stop?
Sir, could you try to stay a little more still? She's very sensitive to movement.
I'll do my best.
He said it without looking up, without sarcasm. And something about that, the total absence of reaction, seemed to infuriate Kendall more than any argument could have. She wanted a response. She wanted to matter. And this quiet man in the gray sport coat was refusing to give her even that. That's when she reached over and snapped his tray table down, hard, against his knees.
Please don't do that.
It was an accident.
It wasn't. Please don't do it again.
You can't talk to me like that. I'm a kid. You're supposed to be nice to kids.
Being a child doesn't mean you can hurt someone and call it an accident.
Okay, that is completely out of line. She is 12 years old and you are a grown man. If you have a problem, talk to me, not her.
With respect, she hit me. Not you.
It was an accident, and you're blowing this completely out of proportion.
Serena Voss, the lead flight attendant on this Meridian Airlines flight, had been watching from the forward galley for the past several minutes. She walked back through the cabin with the practiced calm of someone trained to de-escalate. But those who knew her well, and a few did, might have noticed something unusual in the set of her jaw. She paused at row 4 with a warm, professional smile.
Is everything all right back here? Can I get anyone a drink? Maybe some snacks?
He's been harassing us since we boarded. I want to change seat.
I'm sorry to hear that. Let me see what I can do. We do have a few open seats toward the back of the plane, and I'd be happy to help anyone relocate who'd like more space.
We're not moving to the back. We've paid for these seats. He should be the one to move.
Of course. Sir, would you be comfortable with...
I'm fine where I am. Thank you, Serena.
She looked at you like she knew you from somewhere.
Long flight. A lot of faces.
What happened next is the moment that everyone in that cabin would remember. Because Kendall reached across, looked Walter dead in the eyes, and tipped the orange juice directly onto his keyboard. She smiled when she said it. Not a nervous smile, not a guilty smile, a deliberate one, the smile of a child who has never once been made to answer for anything. Orange juice spread across the keyboard.
Oops.
Not a guilty smile, a deliberate one, the smile of a child who has never once been made to answer for anything. Orange juice spread across the keyboard and began dripping down through the tray table onto Walter's lap. The documents he'd been reviewing, printed pages tucked beside the laptop, were soaked through in seconds. The cabin went quiet, not gradually, all at once.
Those were confidential documents.
You shouldn't even be in business class. You don't look like you belong here.
And there it was. The room heard it. Every last passenger in earshot heard it, and several who weren't. Dominic stood up halfway from his seat. Priya put her hand over her mouth. Even Diane blinked just once, as if some small part of her understood that a line had been crossed that she could not easily uncross. Walter closed the laptop slowly. He blotted his hands with the cocktail napkin. He reached into the inside breast pocket of his jacket and produced his phone. He typed something, 11 words, maybe 12, and pressed send. Then he placed the phone face down on the tray table. He did not look at Kendall. He did not look at Diane. And that calm expression on his face, that total, immovable stillness, was about to make a terrible amount of sense. Priya had leaned forward during the commotion, and in doing so, she spotted something on the floor beneath Walter's seat. A business card, thin and ivory-colored, that must have slipped from his briefcase when the tray table came down. She picked it up. She turned it over. She read the front. Then she read it again. The color drained from her face so slowly and so completely that Dominic noticed.
You all right?
I think I know who he is.
She didn't say it loud enough for the row ahead to hear, but she held the card flat against her palm, pressed it into Dominic's line of sight, and watched his expression change to match hers. The name on the card was not a mystery. Anyone in the aviation industry knew that name. Most frequent flyers had seen it in press releases, annual reports, the kind of business coverage that fills the back pages of first-class magazines. Walter Greer, founder and chief executive officer, Meridian Airlines. Established 1997. The company whose logo was printed on the tail of the plane they were. He wasn't just a passenger. He was the reason this plane existed. The seats, the route, the uniforms, the napkins now soaked with orange juice, all of it bore his name in one form or another. He traveled like this 4 times a year, without announcement, without security detail, without the trappings of the title printed on that card, precisely because he believed the only way to understand what your customers experienced was to experience it yourself. He had been doing it for over a decade, and in all that time, he had never sent a message like the one he sent today. The plane touched down at JFK 43 minutes later. The captain's voice came over the intercom as they taxied. Routine, routine. And then something that was not routine at all. He asked that all passengers remain seated until further instruction. Diane huffed. Kendall rolled her eyes and pulled at her seatbelt. The door at the front of the cabin opened, and a man in a dark suit walked in. He was followed by 2 airport security officers. He walked down the aisle without looking at anyone on either side, and he stopped at row 4.
Mr. Greer, on behalf of everyone at Meridian, I'm deeply sorry for what you experienced today. I'm Marcus Hale, Vice President of Operations. We came as soon as we got your message.
Thank you, Marcus. That was fast.
We take reports from any passenger seriously. A report from you personally, there was no question.
Diane Ashford had gone very still. The kind of still that happens when the brain is processing something too large to absorb all at once. She looked at Marcus, then at Walter, then at the 2 security officers standing at the end of the row. She opened her mouth, and for the first time since boarding, nothing came out.
Mom! Who is he?
I don't.
Ma'am, I need to ask you and your daughter to remain seated. There are some matters we need to address before you can deplane.
What matters? She's a child. She didn't do anything that.
She intentionally destroyed personal property belonging to the CEO of this airline during active flight. That property included documents covered under a non-disclosure agreement. Our legal team has already been notified.
The word legal hit Diane Ashford like a cold wind through an open door. She had used that word her whole life as a threat, a posture, a way of reminding the world that she had resources. She had never once been on the receiving end of it. Priya, pressed back against her seat as the officers moved past, caught Walter's eye for a moment. He gave her a small,
Justice is something else, man. It really is.
but that wasn't the end of it. Not even close. The Ashford family was escorted off the plane last, after every other passenger had been allowed to deplane. Phone cameras were rolling from the gate as they came through the jetway, not because anyone had organized it, but because word travels fast in a terminal. Dominic, still shaking his head in the arrivals hall, had already texted 3 people. Priya had said nothing to anyone. Within 48 hours, the footage that Dominic had quietly recorded during the juice incident, just a few seconds, shaky, aimed at the floor, had been shared 2 million times. The comments didn't use Kendall's name, because she was a minor and nobody published it. They didn't need to. The story told itself. A child who told a quiet man he didn't belong in business class, not knowing he owned the airline. A mother who backed her up at every turn. A laptop full of confidential documents, orange juice, and one very short text message that brought the VP of operations to the gate before the plane had even finished taxiing. Meridian Airlines issued a formal statement confirming that the individuals involved had been placed on the company's permanent no-fly list, and that the matter had been referred to the airline's legal counsel pending a damage assessment. The statement did not name anyone. It didn't have to. Diane Ashford's attorney called Meridian's legal team 3 times in the first week. The calls were returned politely with a number. Kendall did not go to New York that weekend. She went home. No birthday dinner in Manhattan, no hotel with the skyline view, no stories to tell at school on Monday. What she got instead was the first quiet she had ever sat inside of. Real quiet, the kind that has weight, and the slow, dawning realization that the world does not arrange itself around wanting. Walter Greer never made a public statement about any of it. He didn't post. He didn't give interviews. He was asked about it once, months later, by a reporter covering a quarterly earnings call, and he said only this:
I fly with my customers because I believe it matters. Sometimes it matters more than you expect.
Some kids grow up thinking the rules are for everyone else. That money is a shield, that a parent's approval is the same thing as the world's. Kendall Ashford learned, at 12 years old, in seat 4B somewhere over the American Midwest, that neither of those things is true. Some lessons cost a little, some cost everything, and some arrive quietly, in a gray sport coat with a worn leather briefcase, and you never see them coming until it's far, far too late.